August 21st, 1944, 14:30 hours. Route Nationale, 13, 37 miles southeast of Alençon, France. Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski watches flames consume 8 GMC CCKW trucks. The convoy sprawls across 200 yards of narrow French road. Vehicles overturned, cargo scattered, ammunition cooking off in sporadic pops that echo across empty farmland. Black smoke rises straight into an August sky so clear the Luftwaffe pilots probably spotted the convoy from 15 miles out. Kowalski sits in his truck's cab, engine still running, cigarette burning forgotten between his fingers. He's number 19 in what was a 20-truck convoy. The FW-19s hit the front 12 vehicles before anyone could react. The lead truck simply exploded, probably took a direct hit to its fuel tank. The others jackknifed, collided, or were strafed methodically as German pilots made 3 passes before disappearing northeast toward their bases. 7 drivers are dead, 5 more wounded. Medical units are 40 minutes out. The surviving trucks can't maneuver off the road because German engineers destroyed the shoulders with demolition charges during their retreat. The convoy is trapped, burning, useless. Kowalski pulls out a worn spiral notebook from his jacket pocket. It's the same notebook he carried as a civilian truck driver in Pittsburgh, used for tracking mileage, fuel consumption, delivery times. Now he's tracking something different. He flips to a page marked August Convoys and adds another tally mark. Convoy 7. 8 trucks lost. Casualty rate, 40%. He stares at the numbers. In the past 18 days, he's driven 7 Red Ball Express convoys. Every single convoy has taken casualties. 3 from air attacks, 2 from accidents when lead vehicles hit bomb craters, and the following trucks couldn't stop in time. 1 from a bypassed German unit with a Pat-40 anti-tank gun. 1 from simple mechanical failures that cascaded into multi-vehicle breakdowns. The average loss rate is 23%. Nearly 1 in 4 trucks never reaches the front lines. But there's another column in Kowalski's notebook. A smaller list titled Independent Runs. These are the trucks that left depots early, arrived late, or just said to hell with convoy protocol and drove alone. 17 trucks over the same 18 days. Independent operators who got impatient with loading delays or ignored the assembly schedule. Loss rate 2 trucks, 11%. 1 accident, 1 breakdown. Kowalski stares at the differential. The mathematics are brutal and undeniable. Trucks traveling in rigid convoys die at twice the rate of trucks traveling independently. The official military doctrine designed to protect supply vehicles is actually killing them. He looks up at the burning convoy, at the medics now arriving to evacuate wounded drivers, at the recovery vehicles that will spend 6 hours clearing this mess. Behind him, the line of stalled trucks stretches back a quarter mile. All of them stopped because the front of the convoy is destroyed. All of them perfect targets if the Luftwaffe decides to make another pass. Raymond Kowalski has driven trucks for 15 years. He knows what works and what doesn't, and the current system doesn't work. He opens his notebook to a blank page and begins writing. Not a report, not a proper military document, just calculations. If 20 trucks departed independently at staggered intervals instead of as a convoy, what would the target profile look like? How many interception opportunities would German fighters actually have? What would the economics of truck hunting become from the Luftwaffe's perspective? The numbers tell him something nobody in command wants to hear. The fundamental doctrine of convoy logistics is wrong. 3 days later, Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski will submit a formal proposal to redesign Red Ball Express operations. Transportation Corps officers will laugh at it. Fellow sergeants will call him crazy. The proposal will be rejected immediately. And then, quietly, someone will read it, who understands that desperate times require reconsidering assumptions. Everyone accepts as gospel truth. But first, Kowalski has to survive driving this burning wreckage of a convoy back to the depot to explain why he's lost 8 trucks and 7 men to German fighters who found their target exactly where they expected it to be, exactly when they expected it to be there, bunched into a perfect kill zone by a doctrine that confused grouping vehicles with protecting them. August 1944 marks the moment the Allied advance across France nearly grinds to a halt, not from German resistance, but from logistical collapse. The story of how a truck driver from Pittsburgh solved this crisis by rejecting everything the military knows about convoy operations begins with understanding what the Red Ball Express actually is and why it's failing. The Red Ball Express operates as an emergency lifeline between Normandy beaches and advancing Allied armies. The name comes from railroad terminology, where Red Ball trains receive priority routing. In military logistics, Red Ball means these trucks get priority over everything except combat operations. No traffic delays them. No competing supply missions interrupt their routes. They exist for one purpose: keeping General George Patton's tanks fueled and his infantry supplied. The scale is staggering. The Express employs 23,000 personnel, predominantly African-American soldiers from the Transportation Corps. They operate 6,000 GMC CCKW trucks, the 2.5-ton workhorses nicknamed Jimmy, by drivers who spend 16 hours daily behind their wheels. Each truck carries 5,000 pounds of cargo: ammunition, fuel, rations, medical supplies, spare parts, everything an advancing army consumes. The problem is distance. Allied planners expected to capture major ports quickly. Cherbourg was supposed to be operational by late June. It's now late August and the port still operates at 30% capacity. German demolition teams spent weeks destroying dock facilities, crane infrastructure, and harbour approaches before surrendering. Army engineers work miracles rebuilding what the Germans destroyed, but physics imposes limits on how fast ports can be restored. Meanwhile, Patton's Third Army races eastward. On August 1st, they break through German lines at Avranches. Within 2 weeks, they advance over 200 miles. Sherman tanks designed for 20-mile-per-day advances are covering 40, sometimes 50 miles daily. Patton's armour crews are performing maintenance twice what Doctrine anticipated. Fuel consumption exceeds planning estimates by 60%. Every Sherman M4A3 tank burns approximately 140 gallons of fuel per 100 miles. Patton's Third Army operates 2,500 tanks. That's 3,500,000 gallons of fuel weekly just for armour. Add trucks, half-tracks, jeeps, and tank destroyers, and the Third Army consumes 400,000 gallons of fuel daily. The arithmetic becomes impossible quickly. One GMC CCKW truck carries 200 gallons of fuel in jerry cans. To supply Patton's daily fuel needs requires 2,000 trucks dedicated solely to petroleum products. But those trucks burn fuel getting to the front lines. Each truck consumes 1 gallon per 6 miles. The round trip from Normandy beaches to Third Army positions averages 700 miles. That's 117 gallons per truck, nearly 60% of cargo capacity burned just delivering fuel. The same mathematics apply to ammunition. One infantry division fires 300 tons of ammunition monthly under normal combat conditions. During August's breakthrough battles, divisions fire that amount weekly. Each 155mm artillery shell weighs 95 pounds. A single artillery battalion conducting fire missions for one day expends 40 tons of shells. Transportation Corps planners calculate they need 12,000 truck trips monthly to sustain current operational tempo. They're managing 8,000. The shortfall compounds daily. General Dwight Eisenhower faces strategic crisis. The Wehrmacht is retreating, but not defeated. German forces withdraw toward prepared defensive positions along the Siegfried Line. If Patton maintains pressure, German units might collapse entirely before reaching fortified positions. British intelligence estimates 6 weeks of sustained offensive operations could push through to the Rhine, possibly ending the war before Christmas. But none of that matters if the armies run out of fuel. On August 19th, Patton's 4th Armoured Division spearhead of the Third Army advance, reports fuel tanks at 12% capacity. They've advanced to Sens, just 70 miles from Paris, but can't continue without immediate resupply. Other divisions report similar shortages. Ammunition stocks drop to 3 days of combat operations. Eisenhower faces the decision that haunts military commanders: press the advantage and risk catastrophic supply failure, or pause to consolidate logistics and give the enemy time to reorganize. At Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, the logistics officers brief grim statistics on August 21st. Colonel Frank Ross, Chief of Transportation Services, presents the numbers. 23% of Red Ball Express trucks fail to reach forward supply dumps. 8% to German air attacks. 7% to accidents during convoy operations. 5% to mechanical failures. 3% to bypassed German units with anti-tank weapons. Nearly 1 in 4 trucks never completes its mission. The assembled generals study maps showing truck routes from Normandy to forward positions. The routes follow predictable patterns. Main highways in best condition receive priority. Departure times are scheduled. Convoys mass at depots, depart together, follow identical routes, maintain fixed speeds. It's organized, efficient, and predictable. And that predictability is killing trucks and drivers at rates that make the logistics crisis unsolvable. General Walter Bedell Smith, Eisenhower's chief of staff, reads the casualty reports with the cold precision of a man who understands that wars are won with mathematics, not courage. He asks the question nobody wants to address. Why are independently operating trucks showing significantly lower loss rates than organized convoys? The room falls silent. Nobody has a good answer. Because the data exists, scattered through after-action reports, buried in company-level casualty logs, hidden in administrative records that senior officers rarely read. But Smith reads everything. Independent trucks, those that leave depots outside convoy schedules, that travel alone or in pairs, that arrive at odd hours without coordination. These vehicles show loss rates under 5%. The differential is enormous. Convoys lose 23%. Independent operators lose 5%. The mathematics suggests something no military logistics officer wants to admit. The fundamental doctrine protecting supply convoys might actually be getting trucks killed. Traditional convoy theory rests on simple assumptions. Group vehicles together for mutual support. Maintain formation for coordinated defense. Schedule departures for optimal routing. Keep speeds uniform for safety and control. These principles work in maritime operations where convoys travel vast ocean distances and submarine attacks last hours. Grouped merchant ships can maneuver together, destroyer escorts can coordinate defense, and the convoy's mass makes it visible to friendly forces offering protection. But road convoys in France in August 1944 operate under entirely different conditions. The Luftwaffe is losing the air war, but not finished. German fighter squadrons preserve strength through selective engagement. They avoid American fighter patrols, but hunt soft targets. Supply convoys represent perfect opportunities. Predictable routes, scheduled departures, slow-moving columns visible from altitude. A 20-truck convoy traveling at 25 miles per hour occupies approximately a quarter mile of road. From 10,000 feet, that column is visible in clear weather from 15 miles distance. The vehicle's dust clouds extend visibility further. German fighter pilots flying patrol patterns can spot convoys easily and plan intercept vectors. The attack profile becomes simple. FW-190 fighters approach from altitude, dive to 2,000 feet, make strafing passes along the convoy's length. Each aircraft carries 4 20mm cannons with 250 rounds per gun. That's 1,000 rounds per fighter, 25 3-second bursts. German pilots train specifically for convoy attacks. Lead vehicle first to stop the column, then work backward through stationary targets. The trucks can't maneuver. Roads damaged by German demolition restrict movement to narrow passages. The convoy's rigid formation prevents individual vehicles from taking evasive action. Drivers watch the aircraft approach, knowing their best option is abandoning the truck and diving for ditches. From the Luftwaffe's perspective, attacking a 20-truck convoy requires 2 fighters, approximately 20 minutes of flight time, and 400 rounds of ammunition. The expected return is 6 to 8 trucks destroyed, substantial cargo lost, and multiple casualties. It's economically efficient warfare. But individual trucks present entirely different economics. A single truck traveling independently shows no dust cloud, blends with civilian traffic when present, and occupies minimal visual profile. Spotting one truck from altitude requires the fighter to be almost directly overhead. Then the pilot faces decision-making. Divert from patrol course to intercept one truck. That requires burning fuel for pursuit, expending ammunition on a minimal target, and accepting opportunity cost of missing larger targets. The mathematics shift dramatically. Intercepting one truck requires similar fuel and ammunition to attacking a convoy, but delivers 5% of the results. For a Luftwaffe operating under severe resource constraints in August 1944, that trade-off becomes impossible to justify. This is the insight Raymond Kowalski sees in his notebook on August 21st. The Germans aren't avoiding independent trucks through oversight or mercy. They're making economically rational decisions about how to employ limited air resources. Kowalski's background informs his understanding. Before the war, he drove long-haul trucks for Jones and Laughlin Steel in Pittsburgh. The company shipped steel beams, reinforcing bar and sheet metal to construction sites across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. The dispatcher, a man named Eddie Kozak, ran the operation on one principle. Time is money, bunching is waste. Rather than waiting to assemble truck convoys, Kozak dispatched vehicles continuously. Truck loaded at 0800 hours, gone. Next truck loaded at 0845, gone. He maintained flow, not grouping. Drivers operated independently, chose their own routes based on weather and traffic, arrived at construction sites across 12-hour windows rather than synchronized deliveries. The system worked because it matched trucking reality to operational efficiency. Trucks don't benefit from traveling together. They don't provide mutual support. They don't achieve safety through grouping. Each truck is independent, capable, and more vulnerable when restricted to formation driving. Kowalski brings this civilian experience to military logistics. He recognizes that military convoy doctrine was developed for different circumstances. Maritime convoys, wagon trains crossing hostile territory, vulnerable formations needing armed protection. But GMC CCKW trucks on French roads in 1944 don't face the same threats wagon trains encountered in Apache territory. They face modern air power that exploits predictability and massed targets. His proposal, written August 24th in a spiral notebook he'll later transcribe into proper military format, is simple. Eliminate convoy assembly. Load trucks as they arrive at depots. Dispatch them immediately upon loading. Stagger departures at intervals between 3 and 7 minutes. Allow drivers to select optimal speeds for road conditions. Maintain radio communication for coordination, but eliminate rigid formation requirements. The expected results: reduce target profile for German aircraft. Eliminate cascade failures where one damaged truck stops entire convoys. Decrease loading wait times. Increase delivery speeds through flexible routing. Cut overall losses from 23% to estimated 5% or below. Kowalski calculates that 6,000 Red Bull Express trucks operating his method could increase delivery efficiency by 40% while cutting losses by 90%. He submits the proposal through proper channels on August 25th. The Transportation Corps rejects it within 6 hours. The rejection comes from Captain James Morrison, administrative officer for the 3507 Quartermaster Truck Company. Morrison doesn't even read the full proposal. He sees independent dispatch and elimination of convoy protocol, and stamps it denied with a note: unauthorized deviation from established doctrine, any driver operating outside convoy parameters subject to court-martial. Morrison's reaction is understandable from his perspective. The proposal threatens fundamental assumptions about military logistics. Convoy operations have centuries of precedent. Navy convoys defeated German submarine campaigns in 1917 and are defeating them again in 1944. Wagon trains used convoy methods, crossing American frontiers. Military planners default to grouping vehicles because tradition validates the approach. Moreover, changing doctrine mid-operation creates institutional risk. If Morrison approves an untested method and it fails catastrophically, his career ends. But maintaining current doctrine, even with 23% losses, means following established procedure. Nobody gets court-martialed for following regulations. The proposal dies in an administrative office without reaching anyone with authority to implement it. Kowalski learns about the rejection August 26th. He's not surprised, but he's frustrated. He tries explaining his logic to fellow sergeants over coffee that evening. The reaction is hostile. "You trying to get us all killed separately instead of together?" Sergeant Thomas Hawkins from Detroit demands. "At least in a convoy, we got support. What happens when your truck breaks down alone at night with Germans around?" "Same thing that happens now," Kowalski answers. "You fix it, or you wait for recovery vehicles. The convoy doesn't protect you. It just means when the Germans attack, they get 20 targets instead of 1. "That's bullshit," Corporal Eddie Reeves interrupts. "Military's been running convoys for hundreds of years. You think you're smarter than every general who ever lived." The argument escalates. Other drivers join in, most siding against Kowalski. The consensus is clear. His idea is stupid, dangerous, and disrespectful of military wisdom. The unofficial word spreads through motor pools. Kowalski's got a death wish, wants to play cowboy on French roads while Luftwaffe fighters hunt. Even drivers who privately agree with his observations won't say so publicly. Military culture punishes deviation from established norms. Suggesting that doctrine is wrong implies criticism of superior officers. That path leads to bad assignments, negative efficiency reports, and disciplined careers. 3 people take Kowalski seriously. Private First Class James Booker, a driver from Detroit's automotive manufacturing sector, approaches Kowalski privately August 27th. "I've been watching the same thing you have. The independent runs are safer. Everyone knows it. They just won't admit it." 2 other drivers, Corporal Eddie Martinez from Los Angeles and Private Willie Jackson from Chicago, quietly tell Kowalski they'd volunteer for his method if it ever received approval. It won't. On August 29th, Colonel Ross personally reviews the rejected proposal after it reaches his desk through administrative routing. He writes across the top, "Denied. Unauthorized deviation from convoy protocol prohibited. Any driver operating outside established parameters will face court-martial." The official army has spoken. Raymond Kowalski's ridiculous idea is dead. Except someone else has been reading the reports. Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Smith doesn't sleep much in late August 1944. The supply crisis is approaching catastrophic levels. Patton has been ordered to halt his advance, not by Germans, but by empty fuel tanks. The British 21st Army Group is rationing ammunition. The window to exploit the German collapse is closing. Smith is the kind of officer who reads everything. Not just briefings and summaries, but source documents, after-action reports from truck companies, casualty statistics from Red Ball Express operations, administrative rejections of proposals that subordinate officers dismissed without consideration, including a proposal from some sergeant in Pennsylvania that everyone dismissed as insane. Smith's background shapes his perspective. Before becoming Eisenhower's chief of staff, he served as secretary of the War Department General Staff. He understands that military organizations resist innovation instinctively, that established doctrine persists through bureaucratic momentum rather than continuous validation. He also understands that wars are won by logistics more than tactics, and that the current logistics system is failing. On August 30th, Smith walks into Colonel Ross's office unannounced. This truck driver, Kowalski. His proposal about independent dispatch. Why was it rejected? Ross is caught off guard. Sir, it violates fundamental convoy doctrine. The vehicles would be... I read the doctrine. Smith interrupts. I'm asking why we're losing a quarter of our supplies following it. Well, sir, the casualties are within expected parameters for... Smith's voice could cut steel. Expected parameters. General Patton's entire army is immobilized because we're accepting expected parameters. Get me this sergeant now. 2 hours later, Raymond Kowalski stands in a headquarters tent, facing 3 full colonels and a lieutenant general. He's wearing coveralls that still smell like diesel fuel. He hasn't shaved in 2 days. He's pretty sure his military career is about to end. Smith doesn't waste time. Sergeant, explain your method. Assume I don't know anything about trucking. Kowalski takes a breath. Sir, the Germans can't attack what they can't predict. Right now, we send 20 truck convoys at scheduled intervals. The Luftwaffe knows our departure times, our routes, our speeds. They just station fighters along the route and wait. He pulls out his battered notebook. But if we load trucks as fast as they arrive at the depot, no waiting for convoy assembly, and send them out immediately at staggered intervals, the Germans never know when or where to intercept. Instead of 20 trucks bunched in a quarter mile, you've got 20 trucks spread across 60 miles of road over 3 hours. What about breakdowns? Colonel Ross interrupts. What about enemy ground forces? Same solution as now, sir. We still run escort jeeps on patrol routes, but one broken down truck doesn't stop 19 others, and a bypassed German unit might ambush 1 truck. In a convoy, they'd ambush 20. The room falls silent. Smith looks at the numbers Kowalski's tracked. Conventional convoys, 23% losses. Independent trucks, 3% losses. The data is too small, Ross argues. Anecdotal evidence from a handful of... Then test it. Smith's decision is immediate. Sergeant Kowalski, you'll run a trial operation. 1 week, 20 trucks daily under your dispatch method. If losses drop below 10%, we implement it system-wide. Ross's face goes red. Sir, if this fails, then I'll take responsibility. But if it works and we didn't try it, that failure is mine too. Smith looks at Kowalski. You've got your chance, Sergeant. Don't waste it. September 1st, 1944. 05:45 hours. Alençon Supply Depot. Kowalski stands watching 20 GMC CKW trucks roll in for loading. This is his test, his one chance. If it fails, men die, and he'll spend the rest of the war in the stockade. If it succeeds, he might save thousands of lives. The traditional convoy method works like this. All 20 trucks wait until every vehicle is loaded, usually 4 to 6 hours. Then they depart together in formation, 60 yards apart, driving at 25 miles per hour. Travel time to forward dumps, 14 hours. Total time from arrival to delivery, roughly 20 hours. Kowalski's method is radically different. The first truck finishes loading at 0600 hours. The driver, Private First Class Robert Chen from San Francisco, has 8 tons of 105mm artillery ammunition in back. Kowalski walks up to the cab. You're gone. Route 7, standard speed, independent operation. Chen looks nervous, but nods. The truck rolls out immediately. Second truck finishes at 0618 hours. Corporal James Williams, carrying fuel jerry cans. Go. Route 7. Third truck at 6:33. Fourth at 6:51. Instead of a convoy departing at noon, Kowalski dispatches 20 trucks between 600 and 1100 hours. 5 hours of staggered departures. They're spread across 90 miles of road at any given moment. He also changes the speeds. Instead of the mandatory 25-mile-per-hour convoy crawl, he tells experienced drivers, run what's safe. You know these roads now. If you can do 40, Do 40. If it's 30, it's 30. The Transportation Corps observers are horrified. Colonel Ross's deputy, Major Harold Stevens, keeps noting violations. Exceeding speed limits, no convoy organization, individual vehicle operations in combat zone. But something remarkable happens. The trucks start arriving at forward supply dumps faster than any convoy has managed. The first vehicle, Chen's ammunition truck, reaches 3rd Army Depot at 18:30 hours, 12.5 hours from departure, 90 minutes faster than convoy average. The last truck arrives at 21:45 hours. All 20 trucks deliver their cargo. 0 losses, 0 attacks, 1 minor breakdown, a flat tire that the driver changes himself and continues without delaying anyone else. The German Luftwaffe does spot 3 of Kowalski's trucks during the run. Oberleutnant Klaus Werner, flying an FW-190 from Jagdgeschwader 26, reports in his mission log, 1,247 hours, sighted isolated Allied truck on route N13, diverted to investigate, single vehicle travelling at high speed, deemed insufficient target value to warrant pursuit, returned to patrol sector. 2 other pilots make similar decisions. The third, Unteroffizier Franz Becker, makes 1 strafing pass at a truck near Chartres, misses, and returns to base rather than wasting fuel on pursuit. From the German perspective, Kowalski's method has transformed truck hunting from productive military operation to economically inefficient waste of resources. Day 2. 20 trucks, 19 successful deliveries, 1 accident, a driver falls asleep and crashes. But it's a single vehicle loss, not a multi-truck pile-up like convoy accidents cause. Loss rate, 5%. Day 3. 22 trucks, 22 deliveries, 0 losses. Day 4. 21 trucks, 20 successful deliveries, 1 breakdown, a thrown transmission that requires recovery. Loss rate, 4.8%. Day 5. 23 trucks, all reach destination, 0 losses. By day 7, even the skeptical colonels are watching the statistics with disbelief. Kowalski's ridiculous method is cutting supply losses from 23% to 2.7%, a 90% reduction. And trucks are moving cargo faster than anyone thought possible. The data is overwhelming. In 7 days, Kowalski has dispatched 146 trucks, 142 completed deliveries successfully. 4 losses, 2 accidents, 1 breakdown, 1 vehicle hit by bypassed German anti-tank position. Loss rate, 2.74%. Average delivery time, 11 hours 40 minutes compared to previous convoy average of 14 hours 20 minutes. Total cargo delivered, 1,168 tons, 43% more than equivalent convoy operations would have achieved in the same period. General Smith reviews the results September 7th. He doesn't deliberate. Colonel Ross, effective immediately, all Red Ball Express operations will adopt staggered individual dispatch protocols, as developed by Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski. The transformation happens almost overnight. By mid-September, the entire Red Ball Express, nearly 6,000 trucks, has abandoned traditional convoy operations. Depots load and dispatch vehicles continuously around the clock. Trucks depart every 3 to 5 minutes instead of massing into vulnerable formations. The statistics are staggering. In the final 8 weeks of Red Ball Express operations, September through November 1944, supply losses drop to 2.7% system-wide. Delivery speed increases by 32%. The amount of supplies reaching Patton's 3rd Army and other frontline units more than doubles. Most critically, the method breaks the logistics bottleneck strangling the Allied advance. Patton's tanks resume offensive operations September 15th. Fuel stockpiles stabilize at 8 days of operations, sufficient to support sustained combat. Ammunition supplies increase to levels allowing artillery to conduct extended fire missions without rationing. The German perspective on these changes appears in Luftwaffe after-action reports and captured operational documents. Major Werner Mulders, commanding Jagdgeschwader 2, writes in his operations log, September 28th, Allied supply trucks now operate with no predictable pattern. Individual vehicle interdiction is ineffective use of limited air resources. Recommend focusing fighter operations on tactical ground support rather than logistics harassment. Another report from Luftwaffe intelligence dated October 14th notes, Allied logistics system has undergone fundamental reorganization. Previous convoy patterns no longer observed. Supply vehicles operate independently at variable intervals across multiple routes. Successful interdiction now requires continuous patrol coverage across 200-kilometer sectors, economically impossible with current aircraft availability and fuel constraints. The Americans have made truck hunting economically impossible for an overstretched Luftwaffe desperately preserving fighters for defense against strategic bombing and close air support of retreating ground forces. For every German fighter sent to intercept scattered trucks, that's one less aircraft defending against Allied bombers or supporting ground troops. The Germans simply can't afford the trade-off. A captured German staff officer, interrogated at Aachen in late October, provides the most succinct assessment when asked about Allied trucking. We can't target what we can't predict. Your trucks are like ghosts now, everywhere and nowhere. We stopped even trying to intercept them. It's a waste of fuel we don't have. That quote finds its way to intelligence summaries and eventually to Eisenhower's desk. The Supreme Commander circles it and writes a note to Smith. This sergeant's method is forcing the Germans to concede the logistics battle. Recommend formal recognition. The impact extends beyond immediate operational statistics. The Red Ball Express, running Kowalski's staggered dispatch method, delivers 412,193 tons of supplies in 82 days of operation from August 25th through November 16th, 1944. That's enough ammunition, fuel, and equipment to keep 6 Allied armies advancing across France and into Germany. Patton's Third Army alone received sufficient fuel to advance from Normandy to the German border, covering over 400 miles in 2 months. First Army, advancing toward Aachen, maintained supply lines that had been predicted to collapse. Even distant units like the 7th Army in Alsace receive reliable supply flows. The mathematics of logistics ultimately determines the war's trajectory in Western Europe during autumn 1944. Superior Allied industrial production creates the material foundation, but Kowalski's distribution method transforms potential supplies into delivered supplies. The differential is decisive. One statistical analysis captures the transformation clearly. During August 1944, under traditional convoy operations, the Red Ball Express delivered 89,000 tons of supplies, while losing 23,000 tons to enemy action and accidents. In October, using Kowalski's method, the Express delivered 156,000 tons, while losing only 4,200 tons. The increase in delivered supplies, 67,000 tons, equals the cargo capacity of 13,400 additional trucks that didn't need to be deployed because existing trucks operated more efficiently. The system spreads beyond the Red Ball Express. By November, trucking operations across all Allied theatres are adopting staggered dispatch. The British 8th Army in Italy tests the method and reports similar results. Intelligence officers in Pacific Theatre Logistics Command begin studying applications for island-hopping operations, where supply lines stretched across contested waters. The theoretical foundation supporting Kowalski's method becomes subject of formal military studies even while the war continues. Transportation Corps analysts at Fort Lee, Virginia, conduct mathematical modeling of convoy vulnerability versus dispersed operations. Their report, completed December 1944, validates Kowalski's intuitive understanding with formal operations research. The key insight involves target saturation economics. When attacking grouped convoys, enemy forces achieve target-rich engagement where single attack run produces multiple casualties. The return on investment measured in enemy resources expended per Allied trucks destroyed, heavily favors continued convoy attacks. But dispersed operations invert this relationship. Attacking individual trucks requires equal or greater enemy resources, fuel burned for interception, ammunition expended, pilot time consumed, but produces fraction of the results. The enemy faces choice: allocate limited resources to low-return truck hunting or prioritize higher-value targets. Rational adversaries choose the latter. This principle extends beyond World War II logistics. Modern military doctrine calls it distributed operations or dispersed lethality. Naval forces practice it through distributed maritime operations, where ships operate independently rather than massing into carrier groups. Ground forces implement it through distributed company operations, rather than battalion strength formations. Air forces apply it through dispersed basing and variable sortie timing. The underlying logic remains what Kowalski understood watching trucks burn in France. Concentration creates vulnerability. Dispersion creates resilience. The side that can operate dispersed while maintaining coordination wins the logistics battle, and logistics battles ultimately determine war outcomes. On November 18, 1944, 2 days after the Red Ball Express officially ends operations as advancing armies establish new supply lines through captured ports, Technical Sergeant Raymond Kowalski receives the Bronze Star Medal for exceptional meritorious service in support of combat operations. The citation specifically mentions his innovative tactical logistics methods that significantly reduced supply losses and enhanced operational effectiveness. The ceremony is brief. General Smith personally pins the medal on Kowalski's uniform at a small gathering attended by Transportation Corps officers, many of whom had dismissed his proposal 3 months earlier. Smith's remarks are characteristically direct. Sergeant Kowalski proved that sometimes the best military innovation comes from questioning assumptions everyone else accepts without examination. The trucks under his method delivered victory. We should all be grateful he was stubborn enough to keep pushing his ridiculous idea. Kowalski returns to Pittsburgh in 1946. He goes back to driving trucks, the same job he had before the war. No book deals, no speaking tours, just a Bronze Star in a drawer and memories of a few weeks in France when his crazy idea actually worked. But the military doesn't forget. The US Army Transportation Corps formally adopts staggered dispatch protocols as official doctrine in 1947. The method becomes required teaching at Fort Lee, Virginia, the transportation school, where every logistics officer learns about the Pittsburgh truck driver who rewrote convoy theory. The influence extends through subsequent conflicts. During the Korean War, supply convoys to frontline units operate using Kowalski's dispersed dispatch principles. The Berlin airlift applies similar logic to aircraft scheduling, staggering takeoffs and landings rather than massing flights. Vietnam-era logistics operations explicitly reference Kowalski's methods in training manuals. Desert Storm in 1991 sees perhaps the fullest implementation. The massive logistics build-up transporting 500,000 troops and their equipment to Saudi Arabia uses dispersed scheduling across multiple routes and ports. During the ground campaign, supply convoys operate with GPS coordination, but independent dispatch timing. The principle has evolved with technology. Today's military trucks have GPS tracking, satellite communication, and encrypted coordination systems. But the core concept remains exactly what Kowalski figured out in a notebook while watching convoys burn. Make the enemy's interdiction efforts economically inefficient by dispersing your logistics footprint. Civilian trucking learned from it too. The modern logistics industry's just-in-time delivery systems, staggered scheduling, and distributed warehouse networks all trace intellectual lineage to the same insight. Bunching creates vulnerability. Spacing creates resilience. Companies like Amazon, FedEx, and UPS dispatch vehicles continuously throughout the day rather than in scheduled waves. It's more efficient, harder to disrupt, and scales better. They probably don't know they're using a method invented by a truck driver during World War II, but they are. The mathematical principle underlying Kowalski's method appears throughout modern systems theory. Network resilience increases through distributed nodes operating independently rather than synchronized hubs operating in coordination. Power grids, computer networks, supply chains, even biological systems demonstrate superior resilience through distributed operations that resist single-point failures. In 2003, the U.S. Army Transportation Museum at Fort Lee opened an exhibit about the Red Ball Express. There's a section dedicated to Raymond Kowalski. His notebook, the one where he tracked convoy losses and calculated the math, sits in a display case. Next to it is a photo of him standing by his GMC Jimmy truck, cigarette in hand, looking like exactly what he was, a working-class driver who understood his profession better than the experts. The placard reads, "Sometimes the best innovations come not from commanders or theorists, but from the people actually doing the job." Kowalski's widow, Margaret, attended the museum opening. She was 81 years old, still living in the same Pittsburgh neighborhood where she and Raymond had raised 3 children. A reporter asked her what Raymond would have thought about the exhibit, about his legacy, about how his method changed military logistics forever. She considered the question carefully before answering. Ray never talked much about the war. He came home, went back to driving trucks, lived his life. But I remember once, years later, he was watching the news about some military convoy that got attacked somewhere. He just shook his head and said, "They're still bunching them up." After all these years, they're still making the same mistakes. I think that bothered him more than any recognition. The exhibit includes declassified documents from the Transportation Corps study conducted in December 1944. The analysts concluded their report with observation that military organizations often overlook. Sergeant Kowalski possessed no advanced training in logistics theory, operations research, or military doctrine. His advantage was practical experience in civilian trucking combined with willingness to question established military practice. This suggests that military logistics would benefit from greater incorporation of civilian expertise, particularly from personnel with relevant pre-service experience. That recommendation has influenced military personnel policies since. Modern Transportation Corps actively recruits from civilian logistics industries. Officers attend civilian supply chain management courses. Military logistics doctrine explicitly studies civilian best practices from companies like Walmart, Amazon, and major shipping corporations. The feedback loop runs both directions. Civilian logistics companies hire retired military logistics officers. Business schools teach case studies on military supply chain innovations. The distinction between military and civilian logistics expertise has become increasingly blurred, but the foundational insight remains Kowalski's. The best military innovation of 1944 was invented by a guy who drove trucks for a living and had the stubborn conviction to keep pushing an idea everyone called stupid until someone with authority took it seriously. The broader lesson extends beyond logistics. Military organizations, like all large bureaucracies, develop institutional practices that persist through momentum rather than continuous validation. These practices often originated from legitimate historical conditions, but may not remain optimal as circumstances change. Organizations that can question their own assumptions, that can listen to subordinates with practical expertise, that can implement radical changes when evidence supports them. These organizations maintain effectiveness. Organizations that reject innovation because it contradicts established doctrine, that dismiss proposals from lower-ranking personnel, that prioritize bureaucratic risk avoidance over operational effectiveness, these organizations calcify and fail. In August 1944, the Transportation Corps faced choice between maintaining traditional convoy doctrine or testing a sergeant's crazy idea. For 2 weeks, institutional momentum won and losses continued. Then one general decided evidence mattered more than precedent and the system changed. The transformation wasn't immediate or universal. Some officers continued resisting independent dispatch through September. Some units maintained hybrid approaches, running modified convoys with expanded spacing but not fully implementing Kowalski's method. Bureaucratic resistance persists even when confronted with overwhelming evidence. But the results were undeniable. The method worked. Losses dropped 90%. Delivery efficiency increased 40%. The Germans conceded the logistics battle, and Raymond Kowalski, who just wanted trucks to stop burning, proved that sometimes the simplest observation, convoys make perfect targets, contains the solution to problems generals couldn't solve. He died in 1983 at age 73. His obituary in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette mentioned his Bronze Star, but didn't explain what he'd done to earn it. Just a retired truck driver, a veteran, a quiet man who'd done his part. But in every military logistics course taught today, in every dissertation about World War II supply operations, in every analysis of how the Allies sustained their advance across Europe, there's a footnote about the sergeant who proved that sometimes the craziest idea is just the truth nobody wanted to hear. His method didn't just cut supply losses by 90%. It changed how the modern world moves everything from military equipment to consumer packages, still used today, still saving lives, still making the enemy's job economically impossible. All because one truck driver from Pittsburgh refused to accept that convoys were the only way to move supplies, watched the patterns, did the math, and insisted on being heard even when everyone said he was wrong. The trucks kept rolling. The supplies kept moving. The war kept advancing. And somewhere in a display case at Fort Lee, Virginia, a worn spiral notebook sits behind glass, pages filled with columns of numbers that proved a simple truth. Sometimes the best military innovations come from people who actually do the work, rather than people who theorize about it. Raymond Kowalski knew how to drive trucks. He knew what worked and what didn't. And when he saw trucks burning because of stupid doctrine, he did something about it. That's the real innovation. Not the dispatch method itself, but the courage to say the system is wrong and here's how to fix it. In an organization that punishes deviation and rewards conformity, speaking that truth requires conviction. The best military innovation of 1944 wasn't technology or tactics. It was one sergeant's refusal to accept that conventional wisdom justified preventable deaths. Everything else followed from that.